Hello and welcome to another session 3 of Elevate Your Wellbeing Contagious Care. So good to see you all through this time, and just want to welcome all the new members. It's so wonderful just seeing your responses and seeing the growth that's occurring. It's just really delightful. So it's great to have you here. Session 3 today, we're going to be looking at, it's a huge topic of managing our emotions. And I thought I'll break it down into about 4 sessions to take this gradually, because it's no good just doing such a superficial job. So, welcome today to the first aspect of managing our emotions in looking at conflict. Hi Carol and hi Margaret. Great to see you, and please say hi so I know who I'm speaking to today. Just with a wave or a like, it's great to engage with you. So the topic today we're going to be looking at is conflict and how we approach it. Because conflict's okay. As last time we looked at, dealing with different personalities, being in a COVID situation and tightly knit, all claustrophobic in our homes. And conflict can occur when different personalities clash, or when our goals are blocked, or when there's a constant build-up of negativity. And that's what can occur through this time when both people are working in close proximity, when we've got, the situation of all of a sudden homeschooling, 2, 3, 4 kids, maybe even 5, just how we deal with this. So it's not the differences that are the problem at all. It's how we handle the differences that can make us or break us. So when we get frustrated with our partner or our children or our loved ones, even if we're living on our own, how we get frustrated with our loved ones, we can either vent the frustration, the fight response, we can either flee away from it and have a withdrawal response, or we can become curious, really curious, and develop a deeper understanding of our loved one's inner being. So it's great to see all these good mornings, Marie and Vivi and Julie and Melinda. Lovely to see you, Serena. And so I'm going to ask you a question in a minute. But first of all, with the conflict, we need to acknowledge it. We need to accept it as a normal, natural part of life. It's a neutral thing, normal. And we need to acquire a curiosity and ask to communicate. The 4 A's, I'm calling it, okay? To acknowledge it, to accept it, to acquire curiosity first, like, what can I learn from this? Remember the growth mindset we talked about last session? And so to acquire curiosity, what can I learn from this? And to ask then to communicate. Because looking at what's underneath our frustration, it's like an emotional bank account that we have, if you can think of it that way. Positive comments, affirmations, shared great experiences can provide deposits swelling up our emotional bank account. But a flare of anger can cause acute withdrawal, which is just as bad as accentuating our anger into venting it and exploding. So we don't want a withdrawal of our bank account, and the periodic payments that can occur in our bank account. A little bit goes out there. You can relate to those times where it seems a bit low and then you discover more goes, just dribbles out, and little sums are taken out regularly. And we don't want to have that happening either. Unresolved conflict takes regular, small amounts out of our emotional bank account, and perhaps not noticed at the time, but then the goodwill is disappearing and you slip in to the red quite quickly. So unresolved, unforgiven conflicts can just eat away at our souls. And I'm going to describe what can happen in relationship with your long loved ones here. But first of all, I just want to ask you a question. Do you tend to be, with conflict, a withdrawer and just kind of move away, distance yourself, pretend it's not happening? Or do you actually more tend to just vent it out, like just outpouring of frustration, I have to get it out? Which one do you tend to do more of? Okay, remember, both are not helpful in this situation. It's not like having different temperaments and both are okay. It's about being on the end of these continuums. None are so good, but what do you tend to do more often than not? Just type in a quick response there. So either way, if we have an attitude of conflict that says, I can just imagine your relationship, your primary relationship with your loved one as an apple, okay? An apple. If you withdraw from conflict and you don't allow the conflicts will come into your relationship. The apple represents your relationship. Conflicts will naturally come towards you. It's a normal part of life. But if you have an attitude, I don't like that conflict, I'm just going to dig my head in the sand, I'll be an ostrich, then what happens is you take a bite. And if you imagine all the bites taken out of here when the conflicts come, and you just ignore them, your apple, your juicy, beautiful relationship, when all the bites are taken out, becomes a rotten apple core because you haven't dealt with the conflict. You've either just retreated or you've actually gone the other way and exploded and created more distance in your relationship because of that. So do you want your primary relationships to become a rotten apple core? No. But we can have, on the other hand, when conflicts arise, we can actually, instead of letting that become a rotten apple core, not dealing with it, we can actually let the conflict grow in terms of, if we have curiosity, remember, if we accept it, the conflict, acknowledge it, acquire curiosity, that attitude, that mindset of growth. How can I grow from this? And then ask to communicate about it with your loved ones in a calm setting. You can actually let that conflict be the growing edge of your relationship. So you have a huge apple, juicy, beautiful apple then, with these conflicts. You can look back, John and I look back on our life, we've had stacks of conflicts because conflicts are okay. But we look back on our almost 40 years of marriage and think, wow, didn't we grow through that? Remember those days when this was a problem? And now it's a wonderful growing edge of our relationship because we dealt with it. We took the time and the commitment and the energy. It does require energy. If you're a venter, then it does require energy to sit calmly and talk about it. And if you're a withdrawer, it requires enormous energy to lean into your partner and say, yeah, I'm going to do this. I care for you enough, or your loved ones, or your primary relationship, whoever that is. Even if you're living on your own, you're going to tend to be more of a venter or a withdrawer. So let's look at this. Some of your responses, okay? Diane, you're a withdrawer. Marie, withdrawer until you boil over. Good point, Marie. The people who withdraw all the time, you're going to explode in the end. Okay, it's like a volcano. That molten lava is coming up and you're just not addressing it, and all of a sudden, kapoosh, that shocking, just imagine, we all saw what the shocking volcano scenes were like in New Zealand just a few months back. Imagine that's how it becomes in the end. So good point, Marie. Vivi, depends on what time of the month it is. It sure does, Vivi. Thank you. Yeah, no less volatile with aging, Margaret. I love your honesty. Serena, I will talk about it, yes. So either way, whatever we tend to be, it requires energy to do what's constructive, to allow the conflict to become the growing edge of your relationship. And Aristotle gives this wonderful, wonderful quote saying that anger is about speaking up. One way of dealing with anger constructively is to speak about it at the right time, in the right manner, with the right person. So we need to get all those rights clearly. So how are we going to deal with this? If we can have in our mindset this wonderful attitude that the Chinese have with their symbol, they have two distinct symbols in their language to represent conflict. One symbol represents danger, the other represents opportunity. And this is just what I'm talking about, opportunity for growth. So what can conflict be an opportunity for? I want you to just type in your responses right now. What can conflict be an opportunity for? It doesn't have to be danger. It can be an opportunity for some wondrous things. So I'm going to let you just answer those questions now. Another approach, besides Aristotle's, is the wisdom that I have found in the Bible in a verse that says, speak the truth in love. And I always have that in my heart and in my mind to be reminded when I'm frustrated to actually have that balance of, yes, speaking the truth with our primary relationships where we've got that long-term investment that we want to make things work as smoothly as we can. So we do need to speak the truth, but in love. So that's waiting for the right timing, not just doing it when you feel like it. It's setting down some time and asking your loved ones for that time to say, I'd like to spend some time talking about something that I'm concerned about. So to speak that truth in love, each of us know times and people who are quick to speak the truth, but they don't do it lovingly. And then there's people who think they're showing love by not speaking the truth at all, and they just distance themselves permanently. And so that eats away at our apple to become that rotten core. So in our relationship, we've talked about how we often can end in one end of the spectrum or the other. But our challenge is getting that balance right, speaking up, yet retaining goodwill. So some of you here have talked about, Carol, sometimes you withdraw, sometimes you confront. We can be a mixture. That's right. And it depends on the quality of the relationship and also how long we've known them, how secure and trusting we feel in that relationship. Kristen, you used to be a withdrawer and avoider, but now you're able to use your voice. I know that, Kristen. It's just absolutely fantastic. I love your voice. I love that confidence now. Resolution, forgiveness. These are the opportunities for growth that we can have that attitude of with what does opportunity provide? What does conflict provide? It's an opportunity for resolution, an opportunity for forgiveness, for deepening our relationship. Diane, thank you. Followed my letter to somebody who demoralized me in a meeting context. Wow, good on you, Diane. And that came from addressing the issue. Alita, sorry about that, Alita. Your reception's not quite good. Carol, confronting can strengthen the relationship. It sure can if we have the courage to do that. And these next few sessions will give you the courage in addressing what our responses we predominantly are and how we can do things differently. So, do we withdraw at all costs? Do we face anger head on and it frightens away the other person? Or do we acknowledge we don't like it, but we can face it sensitively for the relationship's good? So, I'm going to ask you to do an experiment at home, and it's this, because this will really help you address the next session. The experiment's this: what conflict attitudes have I derived from my family of origin or long-term primary adult relationship that we might have had in the past that is unhelpful and I want to discard? And then what do you value and want to incorporate from your own family of origin in the way you saw your parents deal with conflict that you want to keep? So, or from your previous, relationship, what areas do you want to discard? What aspects of conflict, patterns of conflict, do you want to keep because they're really worth keeping? And feel free to send your messages in so we can all learn from this. This is a growing group. It's fantastic that there's over 100 members that have just come in a few days. And so just want to encourage you that the strength of the group lies within you. It's not just me. It's the work that you want to do on this in between sessions. So I encourage you to do that activity, that experiment, and also to put your responses in, because those responses are going to be helpful to others and it solidifies what you want to grow in as well. So it's like a good win-win for everyone. So one way of dealing with our conflict, our emotions, is understanding where our feelings are coming from. And it's interesting that our frustration and anger is just the tip of the iceberg. We recently had the privilege of going to Antarctica and seeing these enormous icebergs that it was really scary even kayaking around them, knowing what could happen if we were in that very worst moment right there where it just went under. But we could see really clearly in the water just some of the depth, a small part of the depth that they go under. Icebergs have 90% under the water and 10% is all that we can see. So what's unseen is what we need to address. Anger and frustration are the tip of the iceberg. Underneath, we don't want to be the Titanic, okay? Just ask the Titanic what's hidden from view. We want to be able to see the unseen. So we need to delve deeper. And you talked about feelings of hurt, rejection, disappointment, being unappreciated, feelings that, particularly in COVID, the feelings that we feel right now in isolation. And so anger is just what's on the tip, our anger and frustration. And you might be asking yourself, why do we go to that? It's a secondary feeling. The primary feelings are what's underneath the iceberg. So it's really important to find that original feeling when we're experiencing adversity, the grief, loss, feelings of inadequacy, loss of security during these times. What are the feelings? What stops us from picking up on these primary feelings? We tend to just shoot up into anger and frustration or just totally withdraw. And I find in Australian culture, I've observed over the years, that I think it's easier for particularly men to express frustration and anger. It's more acceptable than saying, hey, honey, I need to address this with you. I'm feeling da-da-da-da. It's kind of, our road rage is just shocking here in Australia. We've had the opportunity of cycling in the past in Italy, and I totally feel safest. I felt so much safer cycling from Siena to Rome, 350 kilometers. People asked us, how did you feel safe cycling into Rome? Well, I did, because the Italians are so polite. They're so much faster drivers, but I felt safer with the attitude inside that driver's heart towards cyclists than what generally Australian drivers are towards us cyclists here. And so I felt safer over there than I do here with the road rage. And so we need to look at what's under our feelings rather than just going to the road rage stuff. So what can we look at here in our responses? Speaking the truth in love, Marie, this is an excellent thing for us all to remember. Thank you. And so remember this whole situation here of COVID and this contagious care group, we're wanting to discover the things we want to implement to get out on top of the virus in our own inner well-being and our relational well-being. And one way of practically working on these things is to discover this tip here. And I'm going to show you what it is with my hand. There you go, with my hand. So gift, it's called the gift exercise. And if we can hold on to our thumb, because that represents frustration and anger. And if you think about 4 primary feelings that are represented by your other feelings, and it's guilt, we often respond with frustration, anger, or withdrawal with guilt. The I for gift represents inferiority, often when we're feeling so unappreciated, just so inferior, okay? Lack of value. We might be feeling inferior. The F represents fear of what's in the unknown here with Corona, and how am I going to cope with this family situation all under close proximity for the next maybe 4 months. And trauma, what traumas have we had in the past, okay, that are exacerbating what's going on in our face right now. So it's holding on to our thumb and asking ourselves, what's under it? Is it guilt? Is it inferiority? Is it fear? Or is it trauma? Now, there's a whole stack of feelings underneath the guilt, inferiority, fear, and trauma, but often it can be based on one of those 4 things or any of the other feelings that we've talked about. And the reason why it's called a gift exercise, because when we explore what's underneath with these other fingers, it's a gift to ourselves because we haven't exploded. We hold on to that frustration and anger, take a few deep breaths, take some time out, maybe go for a sprint around the block, dealing with whatever is the best approach for you. And then you could take time to understand, be curious what's underneath that for you. And so it's a gift to yourself in your inner growth with that activity, but it's also a gift to the people you are in relationship with the most, because they don't have to be on the receiving end of the explosion or the total withdrawal. So I hope that speaks something to you of what you can experiment with between now and next session. And I'll just give you a powerful illustration really quickly on how the gift approach worked with one of my clients that I just adore the way he handled it. He came in with anger issues. I told him about the gift experiment. He worked on it immediately, and he happened to have a teenage son who he was teaching to drive at the time. And his teenage son, when he was out, had got the car ready to have a driving lesson, and he was waiting for his father. His father was doing something else, and he was waiting in the driveway. Well, the teenage son impatiently just reversed out so he could just get started, but he went straight over the letterbox and the wall. And I have to tell you, the father, in his excitement about this new activity, this new experiment he'd done on exploring what's underneath his anger with the gift exercise, he taught his whole family, and they were so good at it. So, get back to the scene. The teenage son thought, oh my gosh, his father heard the huge crash, came running out, and the son got out of the car quickly and he said, hold your thumb, Dad, hold your thumb. So So they dealt with that situation in a way that was constructive just by holding the thumb and looking at what's underneath. So enjoy those moments of learning something different. Glad you love the gift concept. Write in what you've appreciated, what you're going to work on. And between now and next Tuesday, we're going to explore this further with lots more tips and activities. So until then, be brave, be life-giving, and let your light shine. See you.